The Kryll homeworld, Aquatica Prime, was a symphony of blues and greens. Towering kelp forests swayed in the currents. Cities of bioluminescent coral pulsed with life, and everywhere, the Kryll patrolled with unwavering vigilance. Born and bred for war, the Kryll were an aquatic species of imposing stature, their bodies sleek and muscular, their eyes like polished obsidian. Their society was as rigid as the ocean floor, every action dictated by millennia of military tradition. Then, with a flash and a ripple, something utterly alien tore through the fabric of their reality. A swirling vortex of emerald energy spat out an object unlike anything the Kryll had ever encountered. A vessel of crude, asymmetrical design, sputtering and groaning as it plunged into the heart of their capital city. Alarms blared, and squadrons of Kryll fighters converged, their biocannons charged and ready. This was an unprovoked incursion, a violation of the highest order. From the mangled wreckage emerged a figure even stranger than the ship itself. He was tall and lanky, clad in faded denim and a t-shirt that seemed to depict some sort of terrestrial rock formation. This was Captain Rex Nebula, a man more accustomed to navigating dive bars than interdimensional portals. His hair was a chaotic mess, and his grin was as disarming as it was inappropriate for the situation. "Well, that was a bumpy ride," Rex drawled, brushing himself off as if he'd just stepped out of a particularly rough taxi. "Anyone got a map? I seem to be a little lost." The Kryll, who had been poised to vaporize him, hesitated. This was not the behavior they expected from an invader. There was no aggression, no fear, only a disconcerting level of nonchalance. This, they realized with growing unease, was going to be complicated. Cultural clashes were inevitable. The Kryll, bound by protocol and a deep-seated belief in the superiority of their militaristic culture, struggled to comprehend Rex's relaxed, often sarcastic demeanor. Rex, in turn, found their rigid customs and humorless pronouncements utterly baffling. It was a recipe for misunderstanding on a galactic scale, seasoned with a generous helping of dry, terrestrial wit. The Kryll, of course, had a procedure for first contact. It involved 17 stages of formal introduction, a detailed recitation of galactic treaties dating back to the Precambrian era, and a ritualistic exchange of bioluminescent algae. Captain Rex Nebula managed to derail the entire process within the first 5 minutes. As the Kryll dignitaries, adorned in ceremonial kelp armor, approached him with solemn reverence, Rex extended a hand. "Name's Rex," he said with a grin. "Pleased to meet you, or whatever the aquatic equivalent of meet is." The lead Kryll, a towering figure named Commander Kryllik, paused, his obsidian eyes narrowing. Extending a limb? Such informality was unheard of. Protocol demanded a formal bow, and the recitation of one's lineage back to the great Kryll of antiquity. "We are the Kryll," Kryllik boomed, his voice echoing through the water. "We are the masters of Aquatica Prime, and we demand to know your purpose in violating our airspace." Rex blinked. "Violating? Nah, just passing through. Portal malfunction, you know how it is. Say, you wouldn't happen to have a cosmic pit stop around here, would you? My ship's making a noise that sounds suspiciously like a dying space whale." The Kryll exchanged confused glances. A cosmic pit stop? A dying space whale? These were not terms found in their extensive database of galactic threats. "Your vessel is of concern," Kryllik stated, his voice laced with suspicion. "Its arrival was unorthodox, and your attire is equally disturbing." Rex glanced down at his faded t-shirt, which featured a picture of a particularly majestic Grand Canyon. "What? You don't like rocks? Everybody likes rocks." He paused, then added with a wink, "They're like the foundation of everything." The Kryll were growing increasingly agitated. This being was clearly mocking them. His flippant attitude was a direct insult to their authority and their meticulously crafted first contact protocol. "We must insist on a full interrogation," Kryllik declared. "Your intentions are unclear and your behavior is unsettling." Rex sighed dramatically. "Interrogation? Seriously? Can't a guy just get directions without being treated like a galactic criminal? Look, I'm harmless. I just want to get back to Earth, grab a burger, and maybe catch a ball game. Is that too much to ask? A burger? A ball game? The Kryll had no idea what these things were, but they sounded suspiciously frivolous. This human was clearly hiding something. The tensions were rising faster than the tides during a supernova. The Kryll, now thoroughly convinced that Rex was either insane or a master spy, decided to take a more hands-on approach. They scanned him with their advanced technology, cataloging every molecule, every stray hair, every questionable fashion choice. It was during this invasive scan that they discovered it. The weapon, tucked away in a reinforced case, seemingly innocuous, was Rex's acoustic guitar. To the Kryll, it was an enigma wrapped in wood and steel strings, radiating untold potential for sonic devastation. Its purpose was unclear, its design baffling, but its threat level was undeniably concerning. Commander Krillic, his gills fluttering with anxiety, ordered the immediate confiscation of the device. This instrument will be subjected to rigorous analysis, he announced, his voice echoing with grave seriousness. Its capabilities must be understood before this Earthling can be allowed to proceed. Rex, oblivious to the Krill's mounting paranoia, simply shrugged. Sure, knock yourselves out, just try not to scratch it, okay? It's a vintage model. He chuckled, completely missing the point. Besides, it only knows like 3 chords anyway. The Kryll, however, were not amused. They transported the guitar to their most secure research facility, a vast underwater complex where their top scientists prepared for what they anticipated to be a demonstration of unimaginable power. The inspection was set to begin. The stage was set. Commander Krillic, surrounded by his most esteemed and terrified scientists, gestured for Rex to begin. Earthling, he boomed, his voice amplified through the facility's speakers. Demonstrate the capabilities of your weapon. Rex, ever the showman, grinned. He flipped open the guitar case with a flourish, revealing the gleaming instrument. All right, buckle up, fish faces, he quipped. You're about to experience the raw, unfiltered power of rock and roll. He strummed a power chord. The sound echoed through the chamber, a distorted blast of energy that vibrated the very foundations of the facility. The Kryll scientists recoiled in horror, their delicate sensory organs overwhelmed by the sheer volume. Commander Krillic clutched his head, his gills flapping wildly. What is this unholy cacophony? He shrieked, his voice barely audible above the din. Cease this assault at once! But Rex was just getting started. He launched into a full-blown rock anthem, complete with a driving beat and a screaming guitar solo. The Kryll were completely unprepared for such an onslaught of sound. Their warfare was based on calculated precision, on silent, swift strikes. This was madness. The rhythmic pounding sent shockwaves through their bodies. The melodic wails were like nothing they'd ever processed. It violated every principle of Kryll martial philosophy. One scientist fainted, another began convulsing, and several more simply stared blankly ahead, their minds unable to comprehend the sheer absurdity of the situation. Commander Krillic, his composure shattered, could only manage a strangled gasp. This is not war, he sputtered, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and utter bewilderment. This is noise. Unacceptable noise. Rex, caught up in the performance, barely noticed the chaos he was creating. He was lost in the music, his fingers flying across the fretboard, his voice belting out the lyrics with gusto. He ended the song with a final triumphant strum, the sound echoing through the silent chamber. So, he said, panting slightly, what did you think? The echoes of the final chord faded, leaving a ringing silence in their wake. Rex beamed, awaiting their reaction, expecting something, anything. But the Kryll just stood there, motionless, like statues carved from the deep-sea obsidian. Then something unexpected happened. A young Kryll cadet, barely old enough to have his own set of battle armor, started tapping his foot. Just a subtle movement at first, a slight twitch of one of his lower appendages. Rex noticed it immediately. "Hey, somebody's got rhythm," he exclaimed, pointing at the cadet. The cadet, startled, immediately stopped tapping, his eyes widening in alarm. Commander Kryll shot him a look that could curdle seawater, but the seed had been planted. The rhythm, the beat, the raw energy of the music. It had resonated with something deep within the young Kryll. It defied all logic, all protocol, all the rigid structures of their society. But it was there. Other Kryll started to fidget. A scientist subtly bobbed his head. A soldier tapped his fingers against his weapon. The music, it seemed, had bypassed their conscious minds, speaking directly to something more primal. Commander Kryll, his face a mask of disapproval, tried to regain control. "Silence!" he barked, his voice echoing through the chamber. This is merely a primitive attempt at psychological manipulation. Do not be swayed by its absurdity." But it was too late. The music had broken through. It was a virus of joy, an infection of rhythm. Even Kryll himself felt a strange urge to wiggle. He fought it with all his might, clenching his fists, his gills pulsating furiously. Rex, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, grinned. He understood. Music was a universal language, a force that transcended culture and species. He launched into another song, this time a bluesy number with a slow, swaying beat. This time the Kryll didn't recoil. They swayed. Subtly, almost imperceptibly, but they swayed. The young cadet couldn't contain himself any longer. He started, humming along, a low, guttural sound that somehow, miraculously, matched the melody. The rigid lines of Kryll soldiers blurred, their stoic expressions softening. The scientists, forgetting their experiments and their data, closed their eyes and simply listened. The music filled the chamber, a wave of sound washing over the assembled Kryll, dissolving their defenses, revealing a hidden capacity for joy. The last note lingered in the air, hanging like a shimmering pearl in the dimly lit chamber. Rex lowered his guitar, a hopeful smile playing on his lips. The Kryll remained still for a long moment, the silence thick with unspoken tension. Then, Commander Kryll stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Rex braced himself, unsure whether he was about to be hailed as a hero or thrown into the deepest, darkest cell of their underwater fortress. "Captain Nebula," Kryll began, his voice surprisingly calm. "Your weapon has had an unexpected effect." Rex raised an eyebrow, surprised by the understatement. "Yeah, well, it's got that kind of power, you know. Good for parties. Good for interspecies relations." He chuckled nervously, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Kryll continued, "We have analyzed the vibrations and the rhythmic patterns, and while we still do not fully comprehend its purpose, we recognize its unifying properties." He paused, clearly choosing his words carefully. "It appears to resonate with something within our collective consciousness." Another Kryll, a high-ranking scientist, swam forward. "Indeed," he said, his voice a low hum. "Our initial assessment was flawed. We believed this guitar to be a weapon of mass destruction. However, it seems its primary function is mass distraction?" Rex snorted, unable to help himself. "Distraction? Yeah, I guess you could say that. It distracts you from being all uptight and militaristic, maybe." He grinned, hoping they understood his brand of humor. To his surprise, Kryll actually nodded. "Perhaps," he conceded. "Regardless, we have reached a decision. We will assist you in returning to your home world, Captain Nebula." Rex's jaw dropped. "Seriously? You're just gonna let me go?" "Your weapon has demonstrated a unique power," Kryll explained. "A power to bridge divides and foster understanding. We believe such a power should be shared, not contained." He paused, then added, almost reluctantly, "And besides, We would like to study it further. Rex beamed. All right, now you're talking. I can give you some lessons, teach you a few chords, we could even start an intergalactic band. The thought clearly horrified Kryll, but he managed to maintain his composure. That will not be necessary, he said stiffly. However, we will provide you with the necessary resources to return to Earth. Consider this a gesture of goodwill. He extended a hand, or rather, a fin, towards Rex. Rex shook it enthusiastically. Awesome. Thanks, Kryll. You know, for a bunch of underwater samurai, you guys are all right. Kryll simply nodded, a flicker of something that might have been amusement in his eyes. As Rex was escorted towards a shimmering portal, he couldn't help but grin. He had come to this strange, watery world expecting conflict, but he was leaving with an unlikely alliance and a whole new appreciation for the power of rock and roll. Back on Earth, Rex was kicking back, catching some rays, when his comm system crackled to life. He almost ignored it, mistaking it for spam, but then he saw the sender ID, Kryll Command. Intrigued, he answered. The image of Commander Kryll flickered onto the screen, his usual stern expression replaced with something different. Rex couldn't quite place it. Was that excitement? Captain Nebula, Kryll began, his voice surprisingly upbeat. We have implemented your suggestions. Rex leaned forward, curious. Suggestions? What suggestions? Regarding the unifying properties of your weapon, Kryll explained. We have formed a band. Rex blinked. A Kryll rock band. That was unexpected. Then the image shifted, revealing a group of Kryll soldiers awkwardly clutching guitars, basses, and even a set of drums made from repurposed underwater mining equipment. They looked utterly ridiculous. We call ourselves the Krilltones, Kryll announced proudly, and we have adopted your song as our anthem. Rex's jaw dropped as the band launched into a chaotic, off-key rendition of Johnny B. Good. The music was atrocious, a mangled mess of screeching guitars and pounding drums, but the Kryll were clearly having the time of their lives. They headbanged with surprising enthusiasm, their normally rigid bodies swaying to the rhythm. Rex couldn't help but laugh. It was the most absurd, wonderful thing he had ever seen. He imagined Kryll warriors, usually so stoic and disciplined, now belting out rock anthems in their underwater barracks. The image shifted again, showing the Kryll cadet who had first recognized the rhythm of Rex's music. He gave Rex a thumbs up, a wide grin on his face. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. Rex realized that his music had not only bridged a cultural gap, but it had also sparked something new, something unexpected within the Kryll society. He had inadvertently unleashed the power of rock and roll upon the galaxy. From that day, relations between Earth and the Kryll improved dramatically. Trade flourished, cultural exchanges became commonplace, and the galaxy became a slightly louder, slightly more chaotic place. And every now and then, Rex would receive a new recording from the Krilltones, each one more gloriously awful than the last, a testament to the enduring power of music to unite even the most unlikely of allies. The intergalactic jam session had begun, and there was no turning back.